What's up, everyone? Welcome to DeFi Digs. Today we are going to look at Jupiter, which is of course on Solana. I'm going to run through all of the features here. There's been some recent updates and tweaks to the platform. We're going to do a deep dive into the perp section, in particular the JLP, but I'll be covering on everything in the trade, everything in the Solana section, and then briefly touch on a few things here on the rocket ship section. There's a lot in here, so not going to cover everything, but going to try to stick to the main features and be as quick and concise as possible. Before we get started, nothing in this video is financial advice or an endorsement. This video is for educational purposes only. Crypto is risky. Make sure you're doing your own research into anything you are using or investing in. Let's dig into it. So Jupiter on Solana, they've been around for quite a long time. They're definitely an OG team. They were affiliated with another project before this, although I can't remember which one at the time. It used to be literally just a swap section. There was none of this stuff. It was just a simple swap, and that's still there. But of course, they have expanded quite a bit, iterated on the protocol a lot. And really kind of act as the gateway into Solana DeFi, I would say. It's got a lot of, it kind of acts as, I wouldn't say a one-stop shop, but a stop that kind of rolls in together a lot of really useful features. And, you know, you can do a lot of Jupiter that on other ecosystems of blockchains would take several applications to accomplish the same stuff on. So let's work through each of these sections, and we'll start with the trade tab here. On the trade tab, you're going to find 4 different sections: the swap, limit order, DCA, and then the newest, which is the value average. The swap is pretty straightforward. It is just like any other kind of DEX aggregator. It lets you swap between asset to asset. It will show you the route down here. Again, as a DEX aggregator, it'll just kind of aggregate various DEXs like Meteora, Phoenix, Orca, Radium, etc., and then give you kind of the best price. It will show you the route that it takes as well. They have a new dynamic slippage setting, which basically you set a max slippage, and then it will attempt to fill it at a slippage below that. I've only used it a few times. It seems to work pretty good, but they also have an auto and a fixed as well, which is kind of the usual classic way. A couple other settings here that you probably won't really need, but one is a direct route. So if you don't want to go through multiple hops to get to the end asset or value, then you can choose that. You can also choose to use wrap sol instead of regular sol. And then they have version transaction, which you're going to want to leave on. It's an upgrade that, like it says, allows for advanced routings and better prices. Next is limit order, which is exactly what it says. If you use SEX to buy a lot of your stuff, then you probably used limit orders before. A little less common on DEXs, so it's a nice feature to have, but you basically set the asset that you want to sell and the asset you want to buy, so you can do any assets. Let's say I want to buy SOL and I want to buy $100 worth. I can set the rate, so SOL's at 135 right now. If I want to buy at 125, I can set that and set my expiry as well. So if I want to do never 7 days, I can also do a custom time frame as well. Then you can place that order. The assets will come out of your wallet and be held in an open order, and then will trigger once that price is reached. You can flip these assets around if you wanted to sell SOL once it reaches a certain price. So if you want to sell it once it gets to 200, then you can choose how much and just do it that way as well. So that's pretty nice. If you want to set some kind of low bids, if you think that maybe we're going down to, I don't know, $100 or something, but you don't think it's going to last there very long, you probably want to set a limit order. That way that order goes through super quickly, and then you have a really nice fill there. Your orders will show up here down at the bottom. You will be able to cancel them as well at any point, and then receive the asset that you are selling, and it'll just get deposited back into your wallet. And then any order histories will show up here as well. The DCA tab, dollar cost average, is essentially a way for you to have regular kind of timed buys. So limit order is going to be just sort of one-off purchase. A dollar cost average is going to be however frequently you set it. But let's say you want to buy $50 of SOL every week, and you want that to go on for 8 orders. then you have this set up, and every week this will buy $50 worth of SOL, no matter what. You can also enable a pricing strategy where it will only purchase within certain parameters. So once it gets above 135 in this case, it will not go through until until SOL drops within your price range again. So also a really nice feature if you want to kind of gradually add to your SOL stack or buy whatever asset you have your eyes on. It'll give you a little summary, and then similar to on the limit order side, it will show all of your active DCAs here in a list, and then your past ones as well. A lot of flexibility here. You can change down to the minute, which is kind of crazy. You can also go to the month, and then, like I said, any amount of orders you want to put in. If you only have $500 and you want to just kind of exhaust that over a month or two, then you have that option. Next, we have value average, which is sort of a dynamic DCA. The goal of this is really to take into account prices more and invest when prices are lower, and then not buy when prices are high. But you set some parameters here. So let's say you want to have the goal of increasing your portfolio value by $100 every week, denominated in SOL, with a maximum budget of $1,000. So you're never going to spend more than $1,000 here. It's going to, let's say over the course of 4 weeks, you're going to make $100 purchases in SOL. The goal is to have a $400 portfolio value. If the overall value is below your goal, then it will buy more SOL. If it is above that, meaning the price of SOL has gone up quite a bit and you're well above the $400 goal, then it will not buy. There's a little visualization, little backtest visualization here to the right that will kind of tell you how much you bought, what your current investment is, average price, all that stuff. If you want to kind of get a better idea of when those buys would trigger, and you want to expand this date range to however long you want. So here you can kind of see that as long as we were kind of within this, sub $120 range, the purchases were mostly going through. They did sort of stop right here for a little bit, right? See some gaps there, and then sold them kind of crazy, didn't buy anything on this buy up, and then started buying as the price fell down. So if you don't want to necessarily try to time the market manually, but you do just kind of want to accumulate SOL, but you do want to take price into account and don't necessarily want to adjust DCA, then value average is probably a good option for you. It is very similar to a DCA with the pricing strategy. The difference is that you're going to need to constantly edit this pricing strategy as the price kind of goes out of range. If the SOL goes back above 200 and things start getting super bullish and you have your max price at 150, you're just never going to buy SOL again. But value average will kind of automatically adjust that, and once there are pullbacks, you'll kind of keep adding. So again, sort of a dynamic dollar cost averaging feature here. Pretty cool. You can click on this button here. It'll take you to actually an Investopedia page, which is a great resource, of course, and it'll tell you all about it if you want to get into the nitty-gritty details a little bit more. Next, we have the Solana tab, which used to be called the Bridge tab. It's all basically having to do with where to buy Solana assets and how to get on chain. The Compare tab is going to give you different options for bridges that you want to use. So let's say you want to bridge from Base, you want to do USDC. Assets are going to be limited, of course, because you're coming from a UBM chain to Solana, but USDC will always work. So let's say you want to bridge 100 USDC over, then you can use either dBridge or Mayan Bridge. Let's say you wanted to do 1 ETH and you actually want to go ETH for ETH, then again you can use dBridge or Mayan. Unlike these other tabs, which you can kind of do natively in the site, or at least some of them, these ones are going to take you directly to the bridge itself. I think it will even set up the assets that you have chosen. So that's pretty cool. The USDC tab is going to just be for if you just want to swap USDC across any of the chains that are integrated into Wormhole via Circle's CCTP, which is their cross-chain transfer protocol. That's just Circle's kind of official USDC bridging mechanism where they mint, they burn USDC on one chain and then mint it on another chain. So if you did want to do the same thing and go base to Solana, you would connect your wallet, put in $1,000 or however much you want to do, and then what Circle's going to do is burn the USDC on base and then mint it on Solana. Again, this is done by Wormhole. You can also use the portal bridge, which is made by Wormhole, but effectively you're just going to connect your EVM wallet, send the transaction through, connect your Solana wallet, and then that will get bridged over. It can take a little while, about 17 minutes you'll see here. I think it doesn't matter the price, yeah. But the fees are also super low, so if you wanted to do like $10,000, you'd be paying 17 cents, which is pretty good. So this is definitely my preferred method, as long as you don't mind waiting. But if you are in a hurry, you can also again use the compare one and still send over USDC. It'll just use the bridge's native liquidity. You'll pay a tiny bit more in fees, like mine's super cheap. D-Bridge is a little bit more expensive, $10, but you'll get it super fast. Yeah, mine uses CCTP, so it's still 20 minutes, but D-Bridge is only going to be 1 minute. So pay a little bit more, but you get it a lot faster. Okay, D-Bridge was just added in here. You obviously saw it on the compare tab, but it's just a native way to use D-Bridge without leaving the Jupiter interface. Pretty straightforward. You have the option of sending to another address if you want, but yeah, it's just a way to bridge using D-Bridge. On-ramp is actually using like a bank account, or not a bank account, but like a debit card, something like that, to on-ramp onto Sol. So if you don't want to go through a SEX or transfer from another chain, then you can do this. The fees are going to be pretty expensive. I think, let's see, if I do $1,000 and I buy USDC, yeah, it's going to be $20 in total fees. So wouldn't recommend that unless that's kind of your last option. And then the SEX is just going to tell you essentially how to buy and withdraw Sol onto Solana. So pretty straightforward, but nothing too special there. Okay, so the Perps tab, this was added to the protocol, I believe, at the very beginning of the year, maybe the very end of last year, but it lets you trade Sol, ETH, or wrap Bitcoin, leverage perpetuals, so you can pay in basically any asset you want. You can go up to 100x leverage. Wouldn't recommend it, but if you wanted to, you could. Let's say you wanted to trade $100 Sol on, let's just do 8x leverage. You would owe $100. Your total size would be your initial payment times your leverage, so $823. It will tell you your liquidation price, which is really nice, and then kind of give you your fees and everything. They just lowered fees, but they are still fairly expensive. So if you're trading quite a bit of perps, maybe not the best one for you, but it's really nice that it's right here. It will show you all of your trades, just like a standard kind of perp DEX. Again, only Sol, ETH, and wrap Bitcoin. It's a very similar model to the first GMX, if you guys use that. And the reason I say that is because they have the JLP token, just like they had the JLP token on GMX. And this is a super interesting token because it is the liquidity token. So it effectively acts as an index fund of all of the assets that are traded on the DEX. So Sol, ETH, wrap Bitcoin, USDC and USDT as well for kind of margin trading. It'll tell you the current weight and then how much is kind of actively being used by the traders. So this is primarily Sol. It's about 44% Sol, 10% ETH, roughly 10% Bitcoin, and then somewhere around 35% stablecoins. So again, as an index fund, just like if you were to buy the S&P 500, it's going to go up as these assets go up and down as they go down, but not quite as much because they are dampened. The volatility is dampened some due to being comprised of, roughly 35% stablecoins. So your volatility to the downside is going to be dampened a little bit, but you're also not going to get quite as much to the upside as you would just holding Sol or just ETH or just Bitcoin. The other part of this is it does pay out trader profit and losses, just like the JLP for GMX does, and also gets 75% of all of the fees on the perpetual portion. So there's a lot going on. Right now you can see there's 78% APY. It's a pretty solid asset to just hold because you're kind of constantly receiving fees. Maybe you are kind of bullish, but you're not sure in the near term if these assets are going to go straight up or straight down. So you kind of want some exposure, but maybe not full exposure. And then you can earn some fees on the side. Of course, it's not risk-free as you do pay out in losses. So if the traders have a particularly strong day, the value can go down. Generally, traders lose money over a long enough time horizon. So it should kind of increase, and we can kind of look at that. If we go to the trade section and then do limit order, we can use this chart here with USDC as my denominator and then JLP. So this is the price of the JLP token over time. November 16th, 23, so very end of last year. And you can see it's fairly consistently just up and to the right. There's a few notable short pullbacks here, but then it kind of just continues the trend up. One thing I'll note is that the total value locked, the assets under management here, is limited to 420 million. This has gone up, it started at 50 million and it's kind of incrementally gone up. But as this increases and more people add value, the APR could go down. This is kind of volatile, but I would say this is probably roughly around the average that I see it now. I'm pretty sure this was also 70%. They just increased it to 75% to offset the fact that they lowered the fees a little bit. So they're kind of always making tweaks on this, but yeah, it's a really kind of just great asset to just hold on to and use it almost like a stable coin of sorts that is just gaining interest, but not quite, because of course there is risk to the downside. So keep that in mind. And again, this limit order chart is pretty nice. You can actually see the price of like JLP over, let's say, Solana. So if you can see what would have happened if you held JLP over Sol, actually pretty even right now. This is when Sol pumped and then Sol kind of sold off, and so yeah, it's actually fairly even, which is kind of interesting. So again, if you want some exposure to the market, not full exposure, and you don't want to be fully out, a great asset. Again, you have some exposure to mostly Sol, but a little bit to ETH and Bitcoin. All the while you're earning quite a bit of fees. And then if you wanted to get real degen with it, you could always kind of leverage this up on something like Camino, where you can kind of deposit some JLP, borrow USDC, buy more JLP, and you're just kind of stacking your yield and your exposure there. The very last tab is the rocket ship. This is mostly kind of their just resources section. There's like so much stuff here. So if you want to dig into anything a little bit more, I'd recommend hitting the guides. It'll talk about each of these sections in more detail. But the governance section is where you can stake your JUP tokens. The JUP tokens receive 75% of the launchpad fees. The launchpad is where projects go to just launch. So they did launch the actual JUP token, and then they've had a few other, when was their kind of testing meme coin. They're testing out the launchpad, and they used it for when, and then there's also been Zeus, Sharky, and Uprock. So if you want to get a portion of those fees, I have no idea what that equates to. I haven't been able to see how much of a payout JUP stakers have gotten. There's only been 3 projects since then, so I wouldn't really rely on it for a steady source of yield. But if you do want to do something with your JUP tokens, then this is good spot for them. Last thing I'll touch on is just the stats. You can get a nice little snapshot of how the protocol is doing. You can see a lot of this stuff, of course, on DeFi Llama and CoinGecko, but $900 million in the last 24 hours, pretty impressive, over 2 million transactions. It will also tell you the top tokens that have been traded, top buys, top sells, and then of course the DEX pool providers and how much is kind of swapped against each of those. So Radium definitely in the lead there. Again, you can see a lot of the stuff on DeFi Llama and CoinGecko as well, but kind of cool if you just want to take a look and check in on, see how things are kind of trending. That's going to wrap us up for Jupiter. They are constantly updating this protocol. It's super impressive how fast the team moves. So I'll probably do another video, down the line when they add even more features. But pretty core protocol to Solana. So if you are interested in Solana, I would definitely get to know Jupiter a little bit more, because you will be using it quite a bit. It's got a lot of interesting stuff. So hopefully you guys found the video helpful. If you did, please give me a like, give me a thumbs up. Let me know if I missed anything. Otherwise, I will see you in the next one.